Hi everyone, it's great to see you and happy Easter. Welcome to week 14. It's amazing. We've just done a great job this semester. The first time we've had this course online. I'll be asking for feedback here at the end of the semester, but for this week I'll review Freeman and Freeman chapter 6, 7, and then we'll talk about what's left on our agenda. So quickly, just to go through, if you have your Freeman and Freeman book, Chapter 6 talks about how we want to develop both oral and written language. And we know that using the 4 modes, reading, writing, speaking, and listening, are really integral to any type of lesson that we do for our ELL learners. Using oral and written language is something that for every interaction we have, that not only do you want to model, you want to encourage students to do. So whether the task really is reading and writing, speaking and listening, we want to make sure we hit all 4 of those skill areas in every lesson. And that should just become routine for you. And this is challenging because students who are newcomers, students who come from different alphabets than ours, students who don't have a lot of proficiency to create conversation, of course, there's a lot of risk-taking in that. But the chapter talks about the importance of interaction, and that begins with you as their teacher. And those of you who've had me in class, you know that at the beginning of most classes, I often will talk about things that are not related to course content. And this is one way we build community. We begin talking about things that are comfortable. And I'll pull in a little bit of what Selig talks about in creating classrooms and routines and how important that is in structure. And especially in elementary teaching for ESL, we do want to remember that if you have routine, that students are used to hearing and seeing that type of language. So let's say, for example, the calendar, and when you have the carpet of the calendar and you go and you spend 10 minutes and you talk about the day of the week, and that language is there, and they practice saying those words. You talk about the weather, and that's really common carpet time. And those are opportunities for students to begin comfortable speaking and talking about regular language and seeing those words written. They might not be able to actually write those words, but they can begin writing those letters if they're more primary level. And we want to make sure that they are comfortable with that. And often kids, even adults, like in the classes I've had, you know, when you can go to the whiteboard and break things up and write things on the whiteboard, flip chart paper, any type of tool to encourage students to use their pen or pencil and write and create those letters is something that you should be encouraging for every lesson. And this is what the chapter talks about, that we want to make sure that you don't have a lesson that goes by where all that student is doing is listening. And even if it begins with copying pictures and repeating words, a little bit of ALM, that's okay. And that we just want to make sure that we're using those 4 skills. They talk a little bit about ALM in here. Input, output, and repetition is super important as well. And repetition on the daily basis, the weekly basis, and the monthly basis. And encouraging those students. If they know on Monday that on Friday they get to stand up and point to the day of the week and point to the schedule. And often students will have specials. You've all been in OPEs now. And talking about the daily time and understanding words, and not maybe being able to see math, but if you have numbers next to math, understanding math class and science class and having students see that as a routine and being able to say those words, and they know which day of the week they might share that on carpet time, could be something that you could put in routine. This also talks a lot about building a community of learners, and we know this through rapport. Again, the pair share. Anytime before students are asked to answer a question out loud, that they do a pair share. They can talk to a partner. It's much less risk. If you can say, what are the colors of the rainbow, share with a partner first. Then you ask for the big group, because again, they're practicing that discourse. They're looking at something, but before they take that risk in front of everyone, they've taken it together as a pair, and they've created knowledge and tried to figure out what the answer is together with that collaborative effort. And then it talks about, of course, organizing the classroom for interaction, the idea of pairing. Sometimes we pair same language proficiency. Sometimes you change those language proficiencies. We always want to be aware of cultural differences in our classrooms. And then, of course, we have the long Potter study and the genre-based approaching, teaching and learning cycle, talks about that. Oh, and then academic genres, depending on your age group, that we can utilize those as well. And plan interactions that create and build academic language. For example, if you're teaching graphs and charts, that you might want to begin with asking students, for example, at home, if they have a pet, let's do the list of pets they have, and they have a controlled sense of vocabulary: fish, dog, cat, maybe bird. And then some cultures don't have pets, so maybe that isn't appropriate. Then let's talk about family members: brother, sister, mother, father, grandparents. And if you have that controlled sense of discourse and they can each ask each other, who's in your family, who's in your family, we create a sense of success for them. It's in controlled environment. You combine content and language development as well. This is everything the chapter talked about. Also, a big part of this chapter 7 is we always want to support a student's L1. His culture, his heritage language, incorporate that, invite them in. Discussion should really talk about families, backgrounds, heritages. It's always okay to invite the L1. There'll be times when you want just English only, but if students share language and culture, sometimes you might want to say, talk about your families first in your home languages, and then let's go ahead and we'll move to English. Let's talk about how you dress today and why are you wearing a hijab, and maybe why you don't wear one. Let's talk about the foods you have at home, and can you talk a little bit about your types of breads? We want to make sure that we recognize that, we value it, and there's never a type of shame, and that students are comfortable asking questions, and that other students are comfortable in learning how to begin to answer those questions that sometimes are awkward. We want to give our students those tools, but most importantly, that we never want to use deficit language and never want to marginalize any type of difference in our classroom. We invite them all and celebrate them all. And that's something that, of course, we've talked about since you've been with me, and using and celebrating all of those differences. It talks about how to use students' cultures and languages. Of course, we want to, you can bring parents in and have students do presentations on their home countries, depending on the age, talk about, again, their foods. It's an easy way to do it. Flags, that's always a fun activity. Then it talks about bilingual education. We've talked about that in 185, the difference between bilingual education and ESL programs. They're both great. They both have strengths. They both have weaknesses. We've talked about that in this course previously. Talks about commons and, the iceberg idea of what we see on top, the Bics and Kelps. We've talked about this as well. And languages for intercultural activity, and then your language for comprehensive content in ideas such as low content embedded activities, anything that takes cognitive academic language proficiency skills, anything that really takes your thinking and your reading and writing skills, those are CALPs, and then your communicative skills, your BICs. We've talked about that, and Chapter 7 reviews that. Translanguaging, that's a new buzzword that'll come and go. Code switching, supporting cultures, everything we know. Okay, I don't think there's possibly any question you have in those two chapters. And then, let's see, in Selick, she talks about organizing your class. She has some really great ideas and guided writing activities, the workshops. It's really more of a guideline in setting up an elementary class. And as you're in your OPEs, to kind of compare what she recommends to what you're actually seeing would be interesting. So keep that in mind. For next week, you will read chapter 5 and 6, which talks about teaching vocabulary, subject-specific vocabulary, and then differentiated instruction. And that's, of course, with usually you can do it with different types of proficiency levels, with different types of learning styles. So we talked about that in 185, but again, she'll talk about that with different types of proficiency levels as well. So for your assignment, boy, we are down to the end of the semester here. You'll have just one more reading assignment here in CELIC. I've already posted it on chapters 5 and 6. Am I going to have you finish? I don't think we're going to do. I'm going to pause for a sec. Okay, so I know I just covered a lot, but I think that's going to finish it for everything that's required for the semester. You will have to do your OPE reflections. I'll put a Dropbox up for that. You'll upload your short responses, and then you can begin your final project. A couple of you have talked to me about the project-based learning and given me some ideas. Your ideas are good so far. I'm sorry the PDF is not editable, so you can recreate it or create something that's similar. You don't have to use the template. It's just there as a guideline, but begin doing that sooner than later. And I'll get a Dropbox for the OPEs. But that's it for this week. I'd love to kind of maybe see if we can get together and have an end of the semester activity just to see each other and say goodbye. But I see I'm running up against the clock here. So I will post that if we can find a time together for that. Other than that, I miss you all, and God bless you, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.